Welcome back to our daily Bible study. I am Matthew Gage, pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Decatur, Texas. We're going to be in Genesis in chapter number 47, Genesis chapter number 47. And here we'll have Joseph's family getting settled into the land of Egypt now that Joseph has brought them down and is caring for them through the famine. And also in the middle of this, there's, I think, a very, very interesting event that happens. This talked about a series of events that happens that I think is one of the reasons that Egypt becomes such a world power in the ancient stage, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So Genesis chapter number 47, let's just jump right on in. Now, where we left off in chapter number 46, Jacob and the rest of his children, besides Joseph, of course, and his two boys, but Jacob and the rest of the family has come down, and Joseph is trying to make arrangements for them to dwell in a place called the land of Goshen, which would be good for their flocks and herds and things. And it talks about that where we left off, they're talking about having their flocks and herds, and to be sure and tell Pharaoh that you raise cattle, because the shepherds are considered very low in society. And I was reading a little bit more along those lines before I started recording this. And evidently that has something to do with the sheep being sacred to a god. That could be something to do with that. But like I said, that's not uncommon in the ancient world for a job like that to be considered a very low position. So chapter 47, verse number 1. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. So he comes in and reports, hey, my family's here, and don't want to overwhelm them, don't bring all 70 people down there. So he picks out 5 of the brothers to come and introduce to Pharaoh. Verse 3, And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. Now, I'll point out here, what did Joseph try to tell them to say in chapter number 46? Tried to say, tell them you're cattlemen. Tell them you raise cattle. And here they say, oh, we raise shepherds. Is there a disconnect? Did they mess up? What happens here? Well, coming up later on, I think it's in verse number 6, that talks about raising cattle also. So I think this is not necessarily that they didn't follow through on the plan, but they did say that we raise sheep, but also it appears that Pharaoh knows that they raise cattle also. So I don't think that there is a contradiction or a mistake made from what's said in the last part of 46 down into chapter 47 here. I just think there's something in that conversation that just wasn't recorded for us. Verse 4. They said, moreover, unto Pharaoh, For to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. So, saying, hey, look, up where we're from, it's terrible. We don't have grass, we don't have water for the flocks, the herds. So we came down here, and we really like this land of Goshen. This is a great place for us. Verse 5. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if thou knowest any man of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. So this, like I said, I don't think that Pharaoh is put off by hearing that they raise sheep. In fact, it seems like there's quite a bit of honor here, basically saying whatever they want, they can have. They like the land of Goshen, that's great. In fact, I tell you what, I'll give them a job. If they're any good with cattle, Joseph, if any kind of skills like what you have, look what a blessing you've been. If they, any of them that can raise cattle, I'll give them my cattle. I'll even give them a job and put them to work. So everything just works out just wonderfully here in this meeting with Pharaoh. It continues on, verse number 7. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. I think this is just an amazing encounter right here. Pharaoh, who's most powerful ruler, I guess, in the world at the time, and here is a man who was a scoundrel in his youth, but has become a man of faith, whose God has blessed. And look at his children, look at the wealth and things that have come along. And this encounter, this is one of those events I wish I could just, be the proverbial fly on the wall and see this. You have Pharaoh in all his splendor and Jacob coming in probably dressed like a shepherd in this interaction between them. And you have Jacob, blessing Pharaoh and giving honor to Pharaoh. I think just would be an amazing thing to see. Verse number 8. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their pilgrimage. So his report, his days have been few and evil, and also saying I haven't even attained to the greatness or the lifespan of my fathers. Basically, humility before his ancestry of Abraham and Isaac, and then down to him. So I know a lot of people use that kind of phrase. How's your life going? Few and evil have been the days. Anyway, a lot of people use that description of their life. It's kind of a sad account there that he's done, but I think it's not necessarily sad or he's being a pessimist. I think it's the humility he's showing. He went from being the scoundrel who was, cheating his brother and cheating his uncle to now I think he's humbled at seeing what God has done and where God has brought him. Verse 10, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. Verse number 11. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their families. And so, according to the families, I've got some little side marginal notes here in my Bible talking about the kind of literal rendering of the Hebrew there, and it's pretty interesting. It actually seems to be something along the lines of caring for them like little child or little children. So that kind of tender nourishment, and also seems to be like that family aspect is according to the children. So I think it shows that that they're growing, but also the tender care. There's some wonderful imagery in that. I love the Hebrew language. Wish I knew a lot more of it. There's just such wonderful imagery in there like that. Verse number 13. Here we begin this section here. And here we are going to witness, and this goes down to, let's see, verse 26. And this section, what is covered here is one of the greatest transfers of wealth that the world has ever witnessed. We are going to see Pharaoh, his power and his wealth increase exponentially. I almost said multiply, but it's exponential growth. And the power of the Egyptian government and hierarchy established. And this is going to have long-lasting effects, and probably one of those events that keeps Egypt and increases their place and power in the world affairs. So we'll talk about this. Verse number 13. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So, we're continuing on in the 7 years of famine. I think we're probably about halfway through at this point by some of the things that will happen here. And but you see, just times are so desperate. There's no food to be had except for the stores that Joseph had stored up. Verse 14, and Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So we see here that in the course of the first few years of this famine, that everybody's going to Egypt. When their food ran out, they go down, and Egypt says, okay, I'll sell you, a sack of grain. Here's the price. And they willingly hand over silver and gold and, their wealth for this. So all the precious metals, the trade value, things like that. And by the way, when we talk about money, this is very much a barter-based economy. So, like I say, anything of value, gold, precious metals, precious stones, all that stuff is in play in this economy. But you see, all of that, basically for all of Egypt, all of Canaan, and probably even surrounding more than that down into Africa and places. Think of taking all the money from that region, and that's a very wealthy region, and now all that money is now sitting in Pharaoh's bank account. So, the average Egyptian doesn't have cash. They don't have precious metals anymore. They've traded practically everything away they have of value to, or these trade commodity type things, to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh has all the wealth, all the money, all the gold, all the silver, all the diamonds, all the jewels. It's all Pharaoh's now, thanks to the famine and Joseph's system of selling the grain back to the people. Verse 15, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth? Verse 16, and Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for the flocks and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. So once all the money runs out, all the trade goods run out, what do? They say, well, what do we have? We have nothing left to trade. And he says, well, how about your livestock? So people now, instead of coming out with, a handful of silver or gold, now they're coming in and they're trading their horses, their cattle, their sheep. They're trading their livestock, which is another expression of wealth. But also, you think about this, and also that could be food, because you could kill them, you could eat them. Also, you could look at it and say, this type of livestock, they're going to breed, they're going to multiply. You can start out with a couple of cows and have a herd in a few years, or well, not maybe a couple of years. It may take you a couple of decades, but you can develop wealth over the years. So this is just another form of wealth that's being transferred to Pharaoh. And by the way, where are all those cows going? It sounds like they're going up in Joseph's brothers. His family is taking care of them in their place in the land of Goshen. So it kind of helps solidify their place in Pharaoh's administration. Verse 18, when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. So now they come to him saying, look, you've got all our money, you've got all our flocks. The only thing left is, practically speaking, the proverbial shirt on their back. They have their own bodies, their children, their families, themselves, plus the land that they had. So they come back and they say, look, we'll trade away ourselves. We'll give away our freedom. We'll be servants to Pharaoh. Our land, we'll trade it. Let's make a deal. We'll serve Pharaoh. He can have our lands. He can have our purses, but we just want to survive. By the way, you think about that. When's the last time that happened in this world? And we get so spoiled here in America. We think, hard times are when, Walmart didn't get delivery in the specific brand of soda pop that we want, our Coke. Why did I say soda pop? It's Coke here in Texas. But our specific brand of something isn't in stock. And we say, oh my goodness, this is terrible. They don't have exactly what I want. And here are these people saying, we just want to live. We've given away everything. We'll give you ourselves. We'll give away our freedom and our land. We'll trade everything just so we have food to eat and survive. We have it awfully good in this world. Verse number 20. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field because a famine prevailed over them, so the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. So here's what's going on. Now Joseph is taking all the land. So now think about this, in just like 3 years span here, Pharaoh has all the money, Pharaoh has all the livestock, Pharaoh has all the land. And also the people have become something of like indentured servants to Pharaoh. And even Joseph is resettling them. There's a very high-level governmental system taking place here. He's putting people in places closer to food, or where they can actually maybe work. Might can help with some crops or something, but this is some very high-level governing taking place. And you think about it, like Jacob and his family. What they do, they had their tents and their sheep, and they would settle somewhere. They might dig a well, but they just kind of lived out on their own. And here is a very, very advanced government taking place that Joseph is at the head of. Now, verse 22, continuing on, says, only the land of the priest bought he not, for the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their land. So the priesthood, this level of aristocracy, it's you have to think about it like that. When we say princes and priests and things in the land of Egypt, it kind of all goes hand in hand. So this group of people, this aristocracy, and like I say, if you know anything about ancient Egypt, and I'm by no means an expert on that at all, but that priesthood was so powerful, and they had a lot of wealth and a lot of power, and like I said, that was your aristocracy. You had, the Pharaoh and the priesthood, and then everybody else down below underneath them. So here is part of the reason why that happened is Pharaoh was taking care of these guys, and they didn't have to trade away their possessions. So it's even that class disparity is even widening, even greater. Verse 23, then Joseph said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the 5th part unto Pharaoh, and 4 parts shall be your own, for the seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. And they said, thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. Verse 26, and Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. So when you have this one ruler ruling, I don't know what percentage that was, 80-90% of the land, something like that, maybe is kind of what I would guess. And now basically everybody is, they're just sharecroppers, they're tenant farmers. And, the government is coming in, one of Pharaoh's administrators comes in and says, okay, you've got that 40 acres right there, here's your seed. I'll be back in a couple of months to inspect what you got, and 20% of it is taken as a tax and given back to Pharaoh. So you think about, now that's even increasing Pharaoh's power even more. And what do the people? The people just go right along with this. They're so desperate to survive that they willingly agree to these terms. I mean, they've traded away everything they have, and now they're willing to make this deal, this 20% tax going forward, which is pointed out that even to the time of this writing must have been in place, which would be Moses writing, the time of the Exodus and things. So 400 years later or so, it's still in place, this law. And they probably forgot where it was. It's like, oh, it's the way it's always been. And Moses says, no, it was a guy named Joseph who helped come up with that plan. Verse 27. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. 40 and 7 years. Now, I want to point out right here before I kind of skipped over verse 27. I had a thought more when I got down to the next verse. But when Israel came down, and all, the children, all the family and things, you'll note that they had that same provision that was talking about the priests, the aristocracy, and things that Pharaoh was giving them food. They had that same kind of deal. So they got to keep their flocks. They didn't trade them away. They didn't own the land. They couldn't trade it away. But they have a special place here. They're not, they haven't become slaves or indentured servants, or whatever you want to call that, this contract that is made between the common people and Pharaoh. They're not in debt to him in that sense. They are increasing their flocks, same time taking care of Pharaoh's flocks and increasing those too. So they are doing very well through this. So the common Egyptians have suffered. They've lost everything. They've lost their rights. They've lost their wealth. But Joseph's family has done very well for themselves and only become more powerful and more wealthy in this series of events, which is part of the reason why the table's going to turn on them here very soon. Well, when we get to the book of Exodus, the common Egyptians and Egyptians in general turn on them. They're jealous of the wealth and successes. So they go from being a very high profile and aristocracy kind of level people to being the slaves that we'll see them in the book of Exodus. The tables turn in part because of the jealousy of how they prospered during this time when so many others did not. Anyway, okay. Verse 28, we talked about that. Jacob is 147 years old. Verse 29, and the time drew nigh that Israel must die, and he called his son Joseph and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. But I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. That's Joseph's response. Verse 31, Jacob said, Swear unto me, and he, Joseph, sware unto him. And Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. So we have Jacob's life is failing him, and one of these final requests, not quite dead yet. We're going to continue on. We're not done with him yet. But this one of his final requests right here is, I don't want to be buried here in Egypt. I want to be buried back home with where Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and my family. I want to be buried in the family plot, if you will. So Joseph swears to make that so. And you'll also point out there, I'll talk about the swearing. They swear the oath and stuff. The hand under the thigh, that's the same thing that Abraham's servant did when he went to go find a wife for Isaac. That deal, it's a cultural thing. Nowadays, you say if you swear an oath, if it's in a courtroom, you put your hand on the Bible. I swear upon swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. Swear upon a stack of Bibles. Maybe a handshake agreement. I'm gonna handshake. That makes this an official agreement. Well, that same kind of thing here is in that culture was putting a hand in the thigh. I don't understand the significance of it. I'll have to read up on it, but it's just one of those curious little customs that they had. And I love those little details and things like that. I may not completely understand them, but just those little vibrant little details of the way life was back then. So anyway, there we go. That wraps up chapter number 47. A lot of stuff going on there. And like I said, I think if you really pay attention in the background to this, you see how Jacob's family prospers even in this time of famine. And I think that's setting up for some of the issues that will come up. But anyway, that's chapter number 47. I appreciate you watching, and I hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.